Charles McMahon for Expert Village. We're talking about the bicycle. You can get more information in my college level textbook described on murrayandmedia.com. In this segment I want to talk about a couple of potential problems to warn you about. The first one is fatigue failure in the pedal stem. Fatigue happens by a crack forming right on the surface, and then the crack propagating bit by bit on the submicroscopic scale until the crack gets big enough, and then on the last application of force it just snaps. Here's a spot right down here where if you get a fatigue failure it could be a problem because you're putting downward pressure on the pedals, you know, down here, and then you take off the pressure and then put it on and take it off and put it on and take it off. This is a threaded joint going right into the crank here, so there's a stem with threads on it, and it gets screwed in to here. To take it off, you take a wrench right here, this nut-like thing, and you just take it off. So what you ought to do, if you do a lot of riding, if you don't do a lot of riding, it's not a big deal, but if you do a lot of riding, maybe every year you ought to take a wrench, take this thing off, clean off the threads, take a magnifying glass, and look right in the roots of the threads to see if you have any cracking developed. Make sure that you don't have any cracks, maybe a 10 power glass to look for cracks perhaps every year, because if you're pedaling along, this thing breaks, you could go right off the bike. I have one of the kids at school did this, and he broke his shoulder and he was knocked off the rowing team for a year. So even though this is rare, when it happens the consequences can be pretty bad. The other thing to watch out for is this. This is an aluminum frame, and what I'm saying now applies to aluminum frames. The aluminum is a heat-treated aluminum alloy. In other words, aluminum is not strong unless you put some alloying elements in it, heat it to a high temperature, quench it, age it at a low temperature. These alloying elements form tiny little particles, and it's the particles that make it strong. Now, this is a welded frame, right? So when you weld this thing, obviously you're heating this region around the weld, right? And when you do that, you're ruining the heat treatment. So it will be soft right around the weld. So a good aluminum frame is welded, and then the whole frame is heat treated, okay? You just don't take heat treated tubes, weld them up, and send them out the door. Although perhaps some bicycles manufacturers might do that in a cheap aluminum frame. So that's a potential region for failure in such a frame. So you want aluminum frames to be heat treated after they're welding. Of course, if you use bonding, you don't have to worry about it because you're not heating the tubing.